If you care about democracy, even a little bit, here's the baseline. When Congress asks for documents, you don't get to play cute. You don't get to oats bureaucracy. You comply. And in this clip, you're about to watch the exact moment Albert just basically says, on the record, we tried to do the after action review and the people with the paperwork didn't cooperate. So before anyone turns this into some cable news food fight, lock in on the real scandal. Oversight getting stonewalled. What happens when the senator spots the witness face?
Okay, it could have been agencies then extraneous to the IC.
Right, and you know, the bureaucracy is real. I mean, it's just every day sometimes feels like a fight just to get simple things done, and that's just part of working in a large organization. So I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying from the intelligence perspective.
Okay, this matters. He's not doing the cartoon villain thing. He's not hungering. He's asking, but anyone who's worked in a big institution knows. Getting simple things done turns into trans worker. But here's where I want you to notice. He's also laying the track for what's coming next, not as an excuse. He literally says he's not making excuse, but as a warning. When you need accountability passed, the machine can slow walk you through that. And that's exactly where bad fit politics loves to live. In the fraud, in the dealing, in the we'll get back to you.
I think they identified fairly quickly that this might be an issue.
Mm-hmm. And with this as an issue, typically we go back, we do after action reviews. Do you think this is something that the U.S. government has learned from? I see you grimace. Maybe share a little bit about that, because if this is system-wide across the federal government, you know, how do we stop this from happening again? What lessons have we learned from this, if any? You're still coming forward as a whistleblower. So what have we taken away from this, and how do we?
There it is. I see your grimace. That's not a throwaway. That's the moment the row class. The witness knows the answer is going to be ugly. And now that the senator doesn't let it slide into polite meandering nothing. Because this is what the real oversight looks like. Not viral grandstanding, not performative shouting, not turning average hearing into a campaign ad. It's, did we learn anything? And how do we stop it from happening again? And the second you're asked that in Washington, watch how fast people start trying to narrow this frame.
We prevent this from happening in the future, whether it's, you know, the spread of a pandemic or, you know, what happened within the agency?
So I really don't want to go beyond IC too much, because I'm not part of like the health establishment. I'm not in that organization. But part of the reason the DIG was pulled together as a task force, it was a temporary tool to perform something like an after-action review and get at the bottom of what happened.
This is the part where dishonest commenters will pretend he's dodging. He's not. He's doing the one thing adults in the government are supposed to do. Stay inside his remit. He's basically saying, I'm not here to play pointed about the entire health establishment. I'm telling you what I saw from the intelligence side. And then he reminds you, the whole point of the task force was to know an after-action review. Translation, this was supposed to be the show your work moment. So now, listen closely, because this is where the polite lane keeping flips into an accusation.
And if you're asking me, did we learn anything? Well, the problem is we did not receive support from the CIA in terms of, and I've documented in my transcribed interview, and I don't want to go into the specifics of that, but there were very specific lists of information we needed so that we could put into context what happened. And so, no, I don't think we've learned our lesson when it comes to transparency and reform. We didn't get the documents we needed. Senator.
Oh, wow. He doesn't say we learned a lot. He doesn't say we're implementing improvements. He says, no, we didn't learn the lesson because they didn't get cooperation and they didn't get the documents. That is not inside baseball. That is the spine of democratic governance. If you can't get the records, you can't order decisions. If you can't order decisions, you can't fix failures. And if you can't fix failures, you're just begging for the next crisis to be worse. And let me preempt the usual right-wing media gimmick right here. That takeaway is not government is evil, burn it down. The takeaway is when powerful agencies refuse transparency, they rot public trust. And then extremists come in and monetize the anger. This isn't anti-institution. This is pro-accountability.
Your committee issued, 14 subpoenas in January of 2025 requesting documents. And Director Gabbard did her absolute best to try and force the IC to start producing these documents. And a bunch of them got sent over to ODNI, but we still didn't get all of them. And so what I'll say is, we did not get the documents we needed from the CIA, state INR. And so the lessons in terms of transparency and reform, I don't think those occurred.
14 subpoenas. 14. Do you understand how insane that is? That's the elected branch representing the public saying, produce the material, and the answer is still partial compliance, slow compliance, missing compliance. And notice how he's careful with specifics. He says it's documented in a transcribed interview. He doesn't want to go into details in this setting. That's restrained. That's process. But the core is explosive. You can issue subpoenas and still not get the full picture. That means the system can protect itself from review. And here's the rap I refuse to let anybody say. The moment you hear CIA and missing documents, there's a whole ecosystem, especially mega media, that wants to spin up a deep state circus, not to improve oversight, not to pass reforms, not to enforce compliance, just to harvest rage and aim it at whatever target helps them that week. If they actually care about accountability, you don't turn this into a meme. You turn it into enforceable consequences for no corporation. Period.
And they can only occur, if we actually do a full review of what happened during COVID. And again, there's a fair question. How long do you want to be backwards leaning looking at COVID? That's a fair question. You only have limited resources, limited time, limited personnel, and we have limited experts that work within the CIA, and they've got forward-facing threats. Yeah. The reason COVID is so important is because what we did find is that there is
This is where the bureaucracy always tries to hide. We've got limited time, limited personnel, forward-facing tech. Yes, and that's exactly why you don't get to stonewall. You don't get to say, we're too busy to explain ourselves. That's not how a democracy works. That's how an unaccountable security state works. And I'm not even blaming the existence of intelligence agency. Spare me the edgy anti-government nonsense. We need competent intelligence. We need experts. We need real defenses. What we do not need is a culture where oversight becomes optional because paperwork is inconvenient. Also, what's the rhetorical loop? The witness is still trying to be reasonable while still saying we didn't learn the lesson. That's credibility. That's not theater.
Much larger meta problem sitting on top of COVID. The fact that we have these scientists, and again, I'm not vilifying any of these scientists we contracted in to come to the IC. We desperately need their expertise. And so when we invite them in, we're inviting them in because we want their help. And so we need them. Mm-hmm. But those same scientists, it's this ecosystem that has a lot of money involved. They're involved with the National Academy of Science, for example, some of them. And, National Academy of Science also helps with our WMD policy for the U.S. government. Unfortunately, the National...
He's doing now. He's widening the lens without going for 10-5. He's saying, look, we bring in scientists because we need expertise. And he explicitly says He's not vilifying them. That's important because to legislate political play on earth is to pick a group and scream villain for clicks. Is pointing at structure, incentives, money, networks, does stuff that makes oversight hard even when people are uncartoonishly evil. And that's exactly why transparency matters even more. When systems get complex, the only thing that keeps them legitimate is the ability to audit them. Now, the next part is where people can get reckless with it. So listen carefully to have it said.
Academy of Science also has a great number of Chinese researchers that co-publish, and so if we're not careful, we're going to have Chinese researchers helping us draft U.S. WMD policy. That's not a good thing. You've got the Counter Threat Reduction Program that involves some of these IC scientists. And once you start cross-pollinating like that, being able to tease out and really provide proper oversight becomes so difficult.
Okay, stop. This is where demagogists sprint in. He's not saying Chinese people are the problem. He's pointing to a security and governance risk. When policy ecosystems are interconnected, publishing, advisory networks, funding streams, oversight gets harder, and conflict of interest gets easier to hide. And its own response to that is to go full xenophobia for applause. You're not protecting the country. You're advertising that you're unserious. The serious pro-democracy answer is boring but necessary. Disclosure rules, conflict of interest firewall, clear documentation, and oversight that can actually get records without being dragged through quicksand. Because if the public can't see what happened, this fill in the blanks. And the people who fill in the blanks the loudest are usually the least honest.
You're talking about also multiple funding streams from multiple different places. It's a very complex problem. COVID, we need the AAR so that and it already pointed to the bigger problem, so maybe that's enough. But
Great.
we need that.
Thank you, Mr. Erdman. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And that's the mic drop in the most bureaucratic tone possible. We need the after-action review because it points to the bigger problem, meaning COVID isn't just an event. It's a stress test. And when they try to do the accountability work, documents, context, full picture, K institution didn't fully cooperate. That is a public trust emergency. Because here's what happens next if you let this slide. Next crisis hits. The same machinery jams. The same records disappear into process, and the same political butchers sue in to weaponize the confusion, blaming whoever is convenient, screaming for clicks, and never got doing the actual reform work. So no, don't let this get repackaged into cheap mega-flavored deep state tantrum. That's not current. That's content. If you're pro-America and pro-democracy, your standard is simple. Oversight means access. Subpoenas mean compliance. After-action reviews mean documents. And if an agency can effectively ignore that, that's not just the senator who's being disrespectful. It's you. It's the public. It's the idea that power answers to the people. That's defied, not chaos, not scapegoats. Accountability that actually bites.